disturbing. Tonight, we are plunging into the dark heart of the Appalachian Mountains with some truly unsettling true horror stories that will keep you up all night, if you're brave enough. Smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next descent into fear. Now, get comfortable, relax. I remember the morning my father vanished. The mist clung to the Appalachian ridges like ghostly fingers. October air carried the scent of dying leaves. Wood smoke drifted from distant chimneys. My father packed his hunting rifle with careful hands. Uncle Lee waited by the truck. Their breath formed small clouds in the cold. They planned to hunt deer in the deep woods, the same woods where generations of our family had walked. Ancient paths wound through towering pines. Streams whispered secrets to moss-covered stones. These mountains held memories older than time. Father kissed my mother goodbye. He ruffled my hair with calloused fingers. His eyes held the excitement of the hunt. Uncle Lee honked the horn twice. The sound echoed off the hillsides. I watched. Their taillights disappear around the bend. Hours passed like slow honey. Afternoon shadows grew longer. Mother checked the clock repeatedly. Dinner grew cold on the table. Still no word from the hunters. Still no rumble of Father's truck. Uncle Lee returned alone at midnight. His face was pale as moonlight. His hands shook as he spoke. Father had left to retrieve his forgotten knife. The blade grandfather had given him. Uncle Lee waited by their camp. Father never returned to the flickering fire. The search began at dawn. Dozens of men combed the forest. Dogs followed scent trails that led nowhere. Helicopters circled like mechanical vultures. The woods revealed nothing. Father had simply vanished, like morning mist touched by sunlight. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The search teams gave up. Hope faded like autumn colors. Mother never stopped listening for his footsteps. I never stopped dreaming of his voice calling through the trees. Uncle Lee blamed himself. He aged 10 years and 10 days. His laughter died with my father. We rarely spoke of that October morning. Some wounds never heal properly. Some questions have no answers. 20 years passed in silence. I built my own life far from those mountains. The city noise drowned out forest whispers. Concrete replaced ancient oaks. But the dreams never stopped. Father's voice still called to me, always from somewhere deep and dark. Uncle Lee contacted me last spring. His voice was different over the phone, older, more fragile, like glass ready to shatter. He needed to tell me something he had kept hidden, something about Father's last day. We met at the same diner where Father used to drink coffee. Uncle Lee's hair had gone completely white. Deep lines mapped his weathered face. His eyes held secrets and shame. He ordered black coffee with trembling hands. The truth came slowly, like water through cracked stone. Uncle Lee had lied about Father's disappearance. Not completely, but enough to matter. Father hadn't gone back for his knife. He had gone to investigate something else. Something Uncle Lee had hoped to forget. They had found an old mine shaft, hidden deep in the forest, overgrown with thorny vines. The entrance was partially collapsed, but still accessible to a determined man. Strange symbols were carved into the weathered timber, symbols that hurt to look at directly. Father was drawn to the mine, like a moth to deadly flame. Uncle Lee tried to stop him, but Father insisted on exploring. He disappeared into that black mouth. Uncle Lee waited for hours, called his name until his voice was raw. Father never emerged from the darkness. Uncle Lee fled in terror. He told the searchers a different story, a simpler story, one that didn't involve cursed mines, or ancient symbols, or the terrible sounds he heard echoing from underground, the sounds that still haunted his dreams. Now Uncle Lee was dying. Cancer was eating him from inside. He wanted to make things right, before the darkness claimed him too. He wanted to return to that mine, to face what he had run from, to find my father's bones. I felt the old pull of those mountains, the same force that had called to father, blood calling to blood, roots reaching deep into Appalachian soil. I agreed to help Uncle Lee, to walk those paths one final time. We would return to the forbidden mine, where father had vanished 20 years ago, where something still waited in the darkness, patient as stone, hungry as winter wind, ready to claim another generation of our bloodline. The mountains remember everything. They never let their children go. We drove the mountain roads in silence. Uncle Lee gripped the steering wheel too tightly. His knuckles were white as old bone. The forest pressed close on both sides. Ancient trees formed a living tunnel. Shadows danced between twisted branches. The air grew heavier as we climbed, thick with moisture and memory. My skin felt tight and strange, like invisible fingers were tracing my spine. Uncle Lee's breathing became labored, quick and shallow. Fear leaked from his pores. We parked where the old logging road ended. Rusted chains blocked further passage. Warning signs hung from rotted posts. The words had faded beyond reading. Only the skulls remained visible, grinning white death on red metal. Our backpacks held flashlights and rope, emergency flares and first aid supplies. Uncle Lee carried his old hunting rifle, the same one from that October morning. His hands shook as he loaded the shells. The forest floor was thick with fallen leaves. They rustled beneath our boots. Each step seemed unnaturally loud. Wildlife had fled this place. No birdsong, no squirrel chatter. Even the insects were silent. Nature itself avoided this cursed ground. We followed a deer path deeper into the woods. Uncle Lee moved like a sleepwalker. His eyes were fixed on something I couldn't see. His lips moved in silent prayer, or perhaps something darker than prayer. The mine appeared suddenly through the undergrowth. A black wound in the mountainside. Timber supports sagged under decades of decay. Rust stains wept down the stone. The entrance gaped like a hungry mouth. Strange symbols covered every wooden beam, carved deep into the weathered planks. They formed patterns that made my eyes water. Ancient markings that predated any known language. Or perhaps they came from somewhere language had never existed. Uncle Lee stopped 10 feet from the entrance. His face was gray as ash, sweat beaded on his forehead. His rifle trembled in his grip, the same terror that had driven him away 20 years ago. Cold air flowed from the mine shaft. It carried the scent of rust and decay, and something else, something organic and wrong, like meat left too long in summer heat. My stomach clenched against the smell. We turned on our flashlights. The beams seemed weak and fragile. They barely penetrated the entrance darkness. Shadow pressed back against the light, thick and hungry, eager to swallow us whole. Uncle Lee's breathing grew worse, short gasps that echoed off stone walls. His eyes darted to corners where light couldn't reach. He muttered words I couldn't understand, old words, mountain words, words that tasted of fear and desperation. We entered the mine together. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Our breath misted in the beam of our lights. The tunnel stretched ahead into perfect blackness. Our footsteps echoed strangely, as if the sound was being stretched and twisted. More symbols covered the tunnel walls. These were different from the entrance markings, newer, carved with desperate fingers. Some looked almost like words. Others resembled crude drawings. All of them felt wrong, evil, like windows into places that should remain hidden. Uncle Lee began to shake violently. His flashlight beam danced across the walls. He whispered my father's name, over and over, like a mantra or a prayer to the dead. His sanity was fraying at the edges. We found the first bones 50 yards in. Human remains scattered across the tunnel floor. Not my father's bones. These were older, much older, yellowed, with age and damp. Some still wore scraps of clothing. Others were picked completely clean. The mine had claimed many victims, across many decades, perhaps many centuries. We were walking through a graveyard. an underground cemetery of the lost and forgotten. The symbols on the walls were their epitaphs, written in languages that predated human speech. Uncle Lee's condition worsened with each step. He stumbled over invisible obstacles, flinched at sounds only he could hear. His rifle barrels swept back and forth, searching for targets that existed only in his fractured mind. Something was wrong with this place, beyond wrong. The very air felt poisoned, thick with malevolent presence, ancient evil that had roosted here, fed here, grown strong in the darkness, waiting for fresh prey to wander into its web. We were no longer alone in the tunnel. Something else breathed in the darkness, something that watched with invisible eyes, something that had been expecting our return. It knew our names, our bloodline, our deepest fears, and it was hungry for more than flesh and bone. The forbidden mine had kept my father's secret. Now it wanted mine as well. Uncle Lee stopped walking without warning. His flashlight beam fixed on empty air. His eyes widened with recognition and terror. He whispered my father's name, but his voice held no hope, only dread deeper than winter graves. Something moved. In the darkness ahead, not quite visible, more felt than seen. A presence that made the hair rise on my arms. Uncle Lee raised his rifle with shaking hands. The barrel wavered like a compass seeking true north. He began talking to the shadows, carrying on both sides of a conversation. His voice shifted between pleading and apologizing. He spoke to my father, but father wasn't there. Only echoes and darkness, only the hunger that waited in the depths. The temperature dropped further. Our breath came in thick clouds. Ice formed on the tunnel walls. The symbols began to glow with faint phosphorescence, like foxfire in a swamp, cold light that revealed nothing and everything. Uncle Lee's grip on reality shattered completely. He saw my father standing in the tunnel, beckoning him deeper into the mine, calling him by name. Uncle Lee lowered his rifle and stepped forward, following something only he could see. I grabbed his arm, tried to pull him back. His skin was fever hot despite the cold. He shook me off, with surprising strength. His eyes never left the empty space, where he believed my father waited, patient as stone, hungry as winter wind. The thing in the darkness grew bolder, fed by Uncle Lee's madness. It began to take shape, not my father's shape, something else entirely, ancient, primitive, born in the deep places where light never reached, where humanity was just a future dream. Uncle Lee raised his rifle again, this time pointing it at me. His finger curled around the trigger. His eyes held no recognition, no humanity. Something else looked out through those familiar features, something that had been waiting 20 years for another chance at Harper blood. I ran deeper into the mine, away from Uncle Lee's possessed form. The tunnel branched in 3 directions. I chose the middle path. My flashlight beam danced wildly. Shadows leaped and twisted on the walls. The symbols seemed to writhe like living things. Behind me came the sound of pursuit. Not just Uncle Lee's footsteps. Something else moved in the darkness. Something that made no sound on the stone floor, but left traces of its presence. Cold spots that burned the skin. Whispers in languages that hurt to hear. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber. My light couldn't find the ceiling or the far walls. I stood at the edge of an underground cathedral, built by something that predated human civilization. The air here was thick as syrup, heavy with age and evil intent. Bones covered the chamber floor, thousands of them, arranged in careful patterns, spirals and circles, geometric forms that made the mind reel. This was where the mine's victims ended, in this charnel house beneath the mountain, fed to something that dwelled in the deepest darkness. My father's bones were here somewhere, mixed with countless others, all who had answered the mine's call, all who had followed the whispers, into the waiting arms of something that should not exist, something that fed on more than flesh, something that devoured souls. The thing behind me grew closer. I could feel its presence like heat from a forge, but cold heat, burning ice that left frostbite on the spirit. Uncle Lee was gone now, completely consumed. wearing his face like a mask, speaking with his voice like a puppet. I reached the chamber's far wall. Another tunnel led deeper, but I couldn't go further. My sanity was already stretched thin. Another step would snap it completely. Some knowledge was too dangerous. Some truths too terrible to bear. The possessed Uncle Lee appeared at the chamber entrance, his rifle aimed at my heart. His face wore an expression of inhuman hunger. 20 years of patience, finally rewarded. Another harper drawn into the web, another soul for the harvest. I threw my flashlight at the nearest bone pile. The beam spun wildly as it fell. Light and shadow danced across the chamber walls. In that chaotic illumination, I saw what really lived in the mind's depths. Ancient beyond measure, hungry beyond description, evil beyond human understanding. I ran back through the tunnels. Uncle Lee's shots echoed behind me. The bullets sparked off stone walls. But he wasn't trying to kill me, only wound me, slow me down, make me easier prey for the thing that commanded him. The mind didn't want to let me go. Tunnels shifted when I wasn't looking. Passages led in impossible directions. The symbols on the walls blazed with cold fire, trying to burn my sanity from inside my skull, to make me another puppet, another harvester for the thing below. I burst from the mine entrance into blessed daylight. The sun felt like salvation on my frozen skin. I ran to the truck without looking back. Uncle Lee didn't follow. He belonged to the mine now, like my father before him, like countless others across the decades. I drove away from those mountains, back to the city, back to the noise and light. But the mine's call followed me. Whispers in the wind, shadows that moved wrong, dreams of dark tunnels and hungry things. The Harper bloodline was marked now, claimed by something older than civilization. Uncle Lee was found 3 days later, wandering the forest in his underwear, frostbitten and delirious. He spoke only of my father and the beautiful music that played in the deepest chambers, where the harvest waited, patient as stone, hungry as winter wind. He was committed to a mental institution, where he drew symbols on padded walls, the same symbols from the mine, over and over, until his fingers bled, until his mind finally broke completely. The doctors called it trauma-induced psychosis, but I knew better. The forbidden mind still calls to me. In quiet moments, between sleeping and waking, I hear my father's voice, and Uncle Lee's voice, calling me home, to the place where Harper blood belongs, in the darkness below, where something ancient waits, patient as stone, hungry as winter wind. Some doors should never be opened. Some places should never be found. Some hungers should never be fed. But the mountains remember everything. They never let their children go. And something in the depths still sings its harvest song, waiting for the next harper to answer the call. The mine remembers. The mine waits. The mine is patient, but not forever. I am a folklore researcher. I study the forgotten stories of America's mountain communities. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I specialize in Appalachian oral traditions. 3 months ago, I received a letter that changed everything. The envelope bore no return address. Inside, handwritten on yellowed paper, was a simple invitation. Come to Whispering Hollow if you seek the old ways. A hand-drawn map showed winding mountain roads leading to a valley I couldn't find on any official survey. The curiosity consumed me. I packed my recording equipment and research materials. The drive took 8 hours through increasingly narrow mountain passes. My GPS lost signal after the 3rd hour. I followed the crude map's pencil marks through forests that seemed untouched by time. The road ended at a wooden bridge spanning a creek. Below the bridge, water moved silently over smooth stones. The air smelled of pine sap and something else, something older. I parked and crossed on foot. Whispering Hollow lay nestled in a natural bowl between 3 peaks. 27 houses dotted the valley floor. Each structure looked hand-built from local timber and stone. Smoke drifted from several chimneys despite the warm September afternoon. An elderly woman approached from the nearest house. She wore a simple gray dress and moved with surprising grace. Her hair was silver white, braided down her back, but her face seemed decades younger than her hair suggested. "You must be the scholar," she said. Her voice carried a musical quality I couldn't place. "I'm Martha Thorne. We've been expecting you." She led me to a small cabin at the valley's center. Inside, the walls were lined with shelves containing glass jars filled with dried herbs. The air held traces of lavender and sage. Martha poured tea from a ceramic pot that looked centuries old. "We don't get many visitors," she said. "The outside world has forgotten us. That's how we prefer it." I asked about the community's history. Martha's eyes grew distant. She spoke of families who had lived here for 12 generations. She mentioned names like Thorne, Caldwell, and Brennan. The same surnames appeared on mailboxes throughout the valley. "Time moves differently here," Martha said quietly. "Always has. The mountain sees to that." I noticed photographs on her mantelpiece, black and white images showing groups of people in old-fashioned clothing. In one photo, a young woman bore a striking resemblance to Martha herself. The clothing suggested the 1940s or earlier. "My grandmother," Martha explained when she caught me staring. "People say we favor each other strongly." As evening approached, Martha offered me a room in the community's guest house. I accepted gratefully. The building sat at the valley's edge, surrounded by ancient oak trees. My room was simple but comfortable. Through the window I could see lights flickering in houses across the hollow. That first night I heard singing. Distant voices carried on the mountain air. The melody was haunting, wordless. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I fell asleep to that ethereal sound, wondering what secrets this isolated place might hold. I spent the following days interviewing residents. Each conversation left me more puzzled than the last. People spoke casually of events from decades past as if they had witnessed them personally. A man named Jacob Caldwell described a harsh winter back in '73 with vivid detail that suggested first-hand experience. Yet Jacob appeared to be in his early 30s. The community kept no written records, no birth certificates, death certificates, or official documents of any kind. When I asked about this, residents would change the subject or claim such things weren't necessary in their isolated valley. I photographed everything: houses, people, the surrounding landscape. Several residents agreed to be recorded for my research. But something strange happened during these interviews. My digital recorder would randomly skip forward, leaving gaps in the audio. Timestamps showed missing minutes that I couldn't account for. On my fourth day, Martha took me to see the oldest part of the settlement. We walked to the valley's far end, where the creek originated from a natural spring. Ancient stones formed a rough circle around the water source. The stones were carved with symbols I didn't recognize. "This is where it all began," Martha said. "Where the first families made their agreement." I asked what kind of agreement. Martha's expression grew guarded. "Some bargains last longer than a lifetime," she whispered. "Some debts take generations to pay." That evening, I witnessed something that made my blood run cold. From my window, I watched as the entire community gathered at the stone circle. They formed concentric rings around the spring. The same wordless singing began, growing stronger as more voices joined. At the center of the circle stood a woman I hadn't seen before. She appeared impossibly old, yet moved with fluid grace. Her hair was white as fresh snow, her skin like aged parchment. But her eyes held the depth of centuries. The singing reached a crescendo. The ancient woman raised her arms toward the star-filled sky. Something shifted in the air, itself. The very quality of light changed, becoming softer, more golden. Time seemed to slow and stretch like honey. I blinked, and the scene was gone. The valley lay silent under the moon. No trace of the gathering remained. I checked my watch. 3 hours had passed in what felt like minutes. The next morning, I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start. Jacob Caldwell appeared as I stood staring at the silent engine. He offered to help, spending an hour examining the motor. "Funny thing, he said finally. "Looks like your spark plugs have aged about 20 years overnight." Martha found me sitting by the creek that afternoon. I was struggling to make sense of my notes. Entire pages seemed to be missing. Photographs showed empty spaces where people had been standing just days before. "You've seen too much," Martha said gently. "The mountain doesn't like to let go of its secrets." I demanded to know what was happening. Martha sat beside me on a fallen log. She spoke in barely audible whispers. "We were dying out once, young people leaving, old ones passing on. The community faced extinction. Then we found another way." She pointed toward the stone circle. "There's something beneath the spring, something older than human memory. It offered us a choice. We could fade away naturally, or we could endure. The price was steep." "What price?" I asked. Martha's eyes filled with ancient sorrow. "Time itself. We give our years to the mountain, and it gives them back, differently. None of us age as we should. Some grow old faster, some slower. The mountain decides who pays and who receives." I tried to leave again that night. This time I abandoned my car and hiked toward the wooden bridge on foot. The path seemed longer than before. Hours of walking brought me no closer to the valley's edge. Stars wheeled overhead in impossible patterns. Dawn found me back at the stone circle. I had no memory of turning around. The ancient woman from the ceremony stood waiting. Up close, her features were both terrifying and beautiful. Skin like crumpled silk stretched over bones that seemed too delicate to support her frame. "You cannot leave until the debt is settled," she said. Her voice sounded like wind through autumn leaves. "You have taken from us knowledge, secrets. Truth itself has a price." I felt something shift inside my chest, a pulling sensation, as if invisible threads were being drawn from my very essence. The woman's eyes grew brighter while mine grew dim. Minutes or hours passed. I couldn't tell which. When awareness returned, I was sitting in my car on a mountain road 50 miles away. The engine was running. My research materials were scattered across the passenger seat. According to the dashboard clock, I had lost 3 entire days. Back home, I developed my photographs. Most showed empty landscapes. The few images containing people revealed faces that looked somehow wrong. Features slightly blurred, as if the subjects existed only partially in our reality. My audio recordings contained only static and that haunting wordless singing. Hours of interviews had become meaningless noise. Yet sometimes, late at night, I could swear I heard Martha's voice speaking words I couldn't quite understand. I submitted my research to the university. My colleagues found it incomplete, lacking proper documentation. The project was quietly shelved. No funding was approved for return visits to Whispering Hollow. Months have passed since then. I've noticed changes in myself. My hair grows slower than it used to. Lines around my eyes have faded rather than deepened. My reflection sometimes seems like a stranger's face staring back from the mirror. I've tried to find the valley again. Official maps show no settlement in that location. Satellite images reveal only unbroken forest. It's as if Whispering Hollow never existed at all. But I know better. Late at night, when sleep eludes me, I can still hear that ethereal singing carried on mountain winds. Sometimes I catch myself humming along, though I don't remember learning the melody. The letter I received still sits in my desk drawer. The paper has aged considerably, becoming more yellowed and brittle with each passing day. The handwriting seems to shift when I'm not looking directly at it. New words appear in the margins, messages I'm afraid to read too closely. Even now, as I write this account, I wonder if I truly escaped it all, or if I'm simply another keeper of secrets, bound to that hidden valley by threads of time I can't see or understand. The mountain takes what it needs, and sometimes what it needs is silence. The singing grows stronger each night. I study forgotten peoples of Appalachia. My name is Dr. Rebecca Hayes. I specialize in isolated mountain communities. Mixed-race settlements fascinate me most. They preserve traditions others have lost. Last spring, I heard whispers of the Keel. People. They lived somewhere in eastern Kentucky, deep in coal country, far from main roads. Local historians claimed they'd existed for centuries, mixed Cherokee, Scottish, and African bloodlines. But no official records remained. A librarian in Hazard mentioned them briefly. "The Keels keep to themselves," she said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Up on Sorrow Ridge. Been there longer than memory." She drew me a rough map. Her hands shook as she sketched. The drive took 6 hours through winding mountain roads. My GPS lost signal after Whitesburg. I followed handwritten directions through forests of ancient oak. The air grew thicker with each mile, heavy with mist and something else. Sorrow Ridge sat hidden in a natural valley. 12 weathered houses dotted the hollow. Smoke rose from several chimneys. Gardens grew wild between the structures. Everything felt frozen in time. An old woman emerged from the nearest house. Her skin showed the beautiful mixture of her ancestry. High cheekbones from her Cherokee blood, eyes green as Scottish hills, hair white as fresh snow. But her face seemed ageless, neither young nor old. "You're the scholar," she said simply. "I'm Granny Ona Keel. We've been expecting you." Her voice carried an accent I'd never heard, part mountain drawl, part something older. She invited me inside for coffee. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and dried herbs. Hand-carved furniture filled the small space. "How did you know I was coming?" I asked. Ona smiled mysteriously. "Word travels fast in these mountains, even when it ain't been spoken yet." She poured coffee from a dented metal pot. The liquid was dark as midnight. "You want to know about us Keels?" she said. "About how we come to be. About why we stay hidden." Her eyes grew distant. "Some stories ain't meant for outsiders," I explained. My research, my interest in preserving oral traditions. Ona listened without interruption. Her fingers traced patterns on the wooden table, always the same circular motion. "Time ain't the same here," she said finally. "Never has been. The mountain sees to that." She gestured toward the window. "Been families here since before the wars, before the government, before most everything." As evening approached, I noticed other residents watching from their doorways. Children who seemed too old for their size. Adults whose ages I couldn't guess. Everyone moved with careful purpose, like they were saving energy. Ona offered me a room in the community house, a small building near the valley's center. "You can stay tonight," she said, "but don't linger too long. This place takes from visitors more than they're usually willing to give." That first night, I heard voices on the wind, conversations in languages I didn't recognize. Sometimes English words drifted through the darkness, always about time, about years given and taken, about debts that never end. The next morning, I began interviewing residents. Each conversation left me more confused. People spoke of events from decades past. They described them like yesterday's news. A man named Thomas told me about the hard winter of '58 with vivid detail, but Thomas appeared to be maybe 30 years old. I asked to see old photographs. Ona brought out a shoebox filled with pictures, black and white images spanning generations. But something was wrong. The same faces appeared in photos decades apart. Children who never seemed to age. Adults who looked identical across 50 years. "Trick of the light," Ona explained. "Mountain folk all favor each other." But her voice lacked conviction. Her eyes avoided mine completely. I noticed my watch running strangely, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Digital displays flickered and jumped. My phone showed impossible dates. March 15th one moment, October 3rd the next. "Electronics don't work." "Right here," Thomas said. "Something in the ground, messes with metal things." He gestured toward the surrounding peaks. "Old Cherokee said this place was cursed. Time got twisted somehow." Ona pulled me aside that afternoon. We walked to an ancient cemetery. Headstones stood crooked and weathered. Dates made no sense. People died before they were born. lifespans stretched over centuries. Don't trust what you see, Ona whispered. Truth changes in these hills. She told me about the bargain, how her ancestors found something in the deep caves, something older than human memory. It offered us a choice, she said. Live normal lives and fade away, or give up pieces of ourselves. Let it feed on our years. What kind of feeding? I asked. Ona's face grew pale. Time itself, she whispered. It takes our years, stores them up, gives them back when it chooses. Nobody ages like they should. Some grow old overnight. Others stay young for decades. I asked to see these caves. Ona shook her head violently. Outsiders can't go there. Places hungry for new blood. Fresh years to harvest. She grabbed my arm. You need to leave soon. Tomorrow morning. Don't wait any longer. But my curiosity was stronger than my fear. That evening I explored the valley alone. Found paths leading into the mountainside. Dark openings in the rock face. Cold air flowed from these caverns. Air that smelled of centuries. I heard singing from deep underground. Voices harmonizing in impossible ways. The same wordless melody from my first night. But now I could make out words. Ancient words about time and sacrifice. About years freely given. I ignored Ona's warning. Stayed another night, then another. My research felt incomplete. Too many questions remained unanswered. The valley's mystery consumed my thoughts. By the fourth day, changes became apparent. Ona looked older. Deep lines had appeared overnight. Her hands trembled with sudden frailty. Other residents seemed different too. Children were missing. Houses stood empty. The community was shrinking. You've been here too long, Ona said. Her voice had grown weak. It's starting to feed. Taking what it needs. She pointed toward the cave openings. Been trying to protect you, but my strength is failing. My equipment began malfunctioning completely. Cameras showed only static. Voice recorders played backwards. My laptop screen displayed text I hadn't written. Words about endless hunger, about time as currency. Cold spots appeared throughout the valley. Patches where the temperature dropped 30 degrees. They moved like living things, following me from house to house. My breath misted in the sudden chill. Whispers filled the air constantly now. Conversations just beyond comprehension. Sometimes, I caught fragments. Fresh years, new harvest. City blood runs clean. The voices came from everywhere, from nowhere. I found abandoned journals in empty houses. Previous researchers who'd come before me. Their final entries described the same experiences, the same growing weakness, the same sense of being drained. All entries stopped abruptly. No conclusions, no explanations. Ona was dying rapidly now, aging years with each passing hour. Gave too much, she wheezed. Tried to shield you, used up my remaining time. She pressed a crumpled paper into my hands. Map to the old road, only way out now. The landscape itself seemed hostile. Trees leaned inward like grasping fingers. Paths led in circles. The sun never moved properly. Day and night blended together. Time became meaningless. My reflection showed disturbing changes. Gray streaks in my hair, lines around my eyes. My hands looked older, veins more prominent. Something was stealing my years, feeding on my life force. I followed Ona's map through the pre-dawn darkness. The path wound upward through dense forest. But distances felt wrong. Miles stretched like rubber bands. What should have been minutes became hours. The landscape shifted when I wasn't looking directly. Trees rearranged themselves. Rocks appeared and disappeared. The mountain was alive, actively trying to keep me trapped. My car sat where I'd left it, but rust covered the metal. Tires had rotted. Windows were cracked. Years of decay in just 1 week. The engine wouldn't turn over. Battery completely dead. I walked for hours along the old logging road. Each step felt heavier than the last. Something pulled at me from behind. Invisible chains around my ankles. The valley didn't want to let go. By noon, I reached the main highway, flagged down a passing truck. The driver looked at me strangely. "You been lost long?" he asked. "Look like you've been wandering for months." At the hospital, doctors found nothing wrong, but my driver's license photo looked different. Older, more worn. The date showed I'd been missing for 6 weeks. I remembered only 1 week in the valley. Blood tests revealed unusual deficiencies. Iron levels of an elderly person. Bone density reduced significantly. Premature aging, the doctor said, usually takes decades, not weeks. I returned to Sorrow Ridge 6 months later. Brought a full research team, GPS equipment, satellite phones. We found nothing. Empty forest where the valley had been. No houses, no cemetery, no caves. Local records showed no Keel family, no settlements in that area. The librarian in Hazard claimed she'd never met me, never drawn any maps. Her eyes held no recognition. But I kept the crumpled paper Ona gave me, the map to the old road. Sometimes the pencil marks shift, show different paths, lead to different places, places I'm afraid to follow. My hair is completely gray now. Arthritis plagues my joints. Doctors say I'm aging rapidly, some rare genetic condition. They offer treatments, medications. Nothing helps. Late at night, I still hear the singing. That wordless melody carried on mountain winds. Sometimes I catch myself humming along. The tune feels familiar, like something I've always known. The valley took what it needed, left me with questions, with memories that might be dreams, with years I'll never get back. Time moves differently in those mountains. Always has, always will. Some debts echo through generations.